Okay, this video is going to prepare you to work on part one of the next project, which I call the spacecraft project. And so the first thing you're going to make is what I'm going to call the lunar surface, which basically is what you're going to end up assembling your spacecraft to eventually when you have it done. So now it's time to have some real fun. You're going to learn three new very advanced techniques, one being the revolve, one being the loft, and one being the sweep. So I'm going to show you a couple of those. This is roughly what it's going to look like. These are all three revolves, and this is a loft, and this is a sweep. So we're going to first just start a new part, and I will demonstrate how to make those three things happen. So you're going to start a 2D sketch, and I'm going to make it flat so that we're making a surface to kind of sit everything on. And we're going to make a rectangle, and I just randomly made this 10 inches by 10 inches so that it was a nice big platform to work with. And then you're going to extrude that. So finish your sketch, extrude, and I just extruded it 1 inch. Doesn't really matter, we just want something flat to work with. So enter or OK. And now I'm going to start sketching some arcs, which are really, you can think of it, the first one I'm going to do is a semicircle. And I'm going to show you what happens when you revolve that. Because if you think about it, if I do a 2D sketch on this top surface, and the easiest way to do a semicircle is to draw an arc. So I'm going to grab that tool and I'm going to draw the top and the bottom of the arc, and let's just make it 2 inches for no apparent reason. And I want you to watch these numbers for a second. First of all, a 2-inch arc, if we wanted to make it into a perfect semicircle, a 2-inch diameter would have a 1-inch radius. So if I brought my cursor vertical and typed in a 1, this would be a perfect semicircle because the radius is 1 and the diameter is 2. And to complete that sketch so that it could be extruded, I need to add a line. And some of you have done this already in another video. So once I have this entire path connected as a perfect semicircle, I can finish the sketch and I can learn the revolve tool. And if you think about it, if I have a semicircle and I revolve it around an axis, it will turn into some form of a sphere. So I'm now going to revolve, and it's first guesses at my profile. Profile means the sketch that I want to revolve. So that is the sketch I want. And then to revolve, you have to tell it an axis. So what do you want it to rotate around, just like the Earth revolves around an axis? So I'm going to click on axis and select this middle line, and it's going to guess that I want to go 360 degrees around. That's what full means. And so I want you to look and see what that's doing. It's going through all the way into our platform, but we can't see that because our radius is 1 and our thickness of our base is 1, and so we can't see it going through to the other side, but it's actually revolving all the way through, which is totally fine. I could also tell it to revolve a certain number of degrees. I could tell it to revolve 180 degrees, which is not going to change anything because it's going to be going through just the top and then stopping. I could also tell it to revolve 90 degrees, and then it's going to go basically halfway and make this kind of weird shelf. For this example, I'm going to do 180 degrees, but you're going to have a chance to play with this more later, and hit OK. So now we just kind of have a bump. So I'm going to show you a couple other kind of shapes that you can revolve so that you can see what the radius of the arc does to the whole procedure. And so I'm going to make another one right about here, and I'm going to make this one, I don't know, 1 inch, and then actually that's not big enough to see anything. Let's make this one 2 again. So 2 inches, and then I want you to see what happens. Here I'm at about 1 inches, which is about half of my diameter. If I bring it out anymore, the numbers are getting bigger, and it's going to make kind of a weird shape, which is fine. We can try that. If I bring it this way, actually, if I have it less than 1 inch, let's look at that. Less than 1 inch, you'd think the numbers would be getting smaller, but they're actually getting larger. So if I want it to not be, we'll just do 2. I'm going to make it a weird shape bump, larger than the radius of a full semicircle. Complete that. Just see what that looks like. And we'll revolve that completely around. I'm just going to do full just to be quick. Axis, it defaulted to full. Okay, if I say okay, now we have this kind of strange shape because I revolved kind of a bulky shape around. And you can see since I went full, it went all the way to the other side. And if I didn't want that to happen, I would just have to go back to my revolution, right click, do edit feature, and change that to 180 degrees so that it only goes through the top portion of our base. See, it disappeared. Okay, let's look at another shape that we can make with revolve quickly here. So I'm going to do another arc, but this time I'm going to make it less than the radius of a full semicircle. So I'm going to again do this 2 inches just to make it simple to talk about. And so here's about 1. And if I can get larger in numbers going this way. I can also get larger in numbers, which is kind of strange, going this way. It's basically moving my center over to the left. So if I make it about right here, you can see that it's much less, I guess you could say, concave, much less concave than a full semicircle. And now if I connect this green dot to green dot, and I finish this sketch and revolve this, and remember you always have to select the axis, and I'm going to revolve that. It doesn't matter if it's full because that's definitely not big enough to go around to the other side. And so that's a shape that we get from that method of revolving. So I want you to make each of those 3 shapes on the top of your platform, and then you're going to have a chance to play with some more shapes later. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is how do you loft. And so a loft is moving from one plane to another plane. And this is really cool. You're going to learn how to do a work plane. So I'm going to set up a circle on this top surface. And let's see. I'm going to make a circle, I don't know, how about 3 inches? 3 inches on the bottom. And then we're going to, oops, wrong side. Let's click home. Then I'm going to turn on one of my planes, and I need to do that so, oops, I need to finish that sketch. So I have some planes inside of this origin folder. I have a plane that goes in each direction. And the one that I want to work with is the XZ plane, because I want to bring a plane up above that. So I'm going to right click on the XZ plane. If I click on visibility, it's going to make that one show up. And once that's showing up, I can click on this plane button and select offset from plane. And what that means is if I already have a plane, which I do, the XZ, I can now click on the XZ plane and kind of drag it up as far as I want it to go. So you can see the numbers changing. Right now it's 2.3125 inches above the original plane. I could stop there and just see what that looks like. And if I click on the front, I can see exactly how high up that is. So I'll go ahead and go with that. The number is not exceedingly important. So now I'm going to actually look at the top view. I'm going to start sketching. Actually, let me go home so you can see what that looks like. If I go home, and I'm going to start another sketch, but I'm going to start this sketch on the work plane I just created. The work plane is the one that I brought up above my XZ plane. And now I'm going to sketch another circle, a smaller one. This is going to be kind of like making a little volcano on my lunar surface. And I'm going to make it, I don't know, 1.5 inches. And so it's smaller than the original circle. And when you finish this sketch, you're going to see that you have 2 circles, but they're offset from each other. One is on this surface and one is up above. And that's what we want to create a loft. So loft lets you connect 2 sketches with some kind of solid. So I'm going to click on the bottom sketch, and then I'm going to click on the top sketch, and it tries to connect them, and it's able to because these are above each other and situated in a way that lets it loft. So if I say okay, it's going to fill that in with a solid feature. Pretty cool. And then now I'm done with that work plane, and so I don't delete it. What I do is I just right click on it and I click visibility so that it gets unchecked, and so it'll turn off. Voila. Now we have a base with some pretty cool revolved features and a loft. So the last thing I want to show you today is one of the hardest things to do because it involves making a 3D shape. But we're going to start with another circle on our surface, on our lunar surface. And I probably should be saving by now. Let's do that next. And I'm going to make a circle about over here. And I'm going to make it 1 inch in diameter and finish that sketch. And now I'm going to go ahead and save. Don't forget to do this. We should have done this a long time ago. If my computer crashed, all this work would be lost. So you should always do your name first, last initial, and I'm going to call this lunar surface. And you should call it the same thing because we're going to be using this later in the second semester. Okay, and this is also part of your semester exam project. All right, so save. Now if we crash, we're okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is start a 3D sketch so that I can come up into this space and I don't have to stay on the surface. So to do that, you click on this arrow and 3D sketch, and then I'm going to do what's called a spline. And a spline, I like to do control vertex, but you can play with these two to see which one you like the best. And to do that, I'm going to grab the center of this circle, and then I'm just going to start. I'm actually going to look at this from the front view so I can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to start. I'm going to go up, and it's going to try to guess at a curve. I'm going to go back down a little bit, and then I'm going to go back up. And so it's making kind of a little curve based on my direction that I'm moving in. And then I'm going to look at it from a different angle again. Now, to do what's called a sweep, I need a sketch, which is what I have, which is what the circle is, and then I need a path, what is what it's called, which is what this 3D spline line is. And once I finish this sketch, I can do what's called a sweep. And a sweep lets you tell it, my profile is this, my path is this, and then it tries to make that shape continue along the path to make a solid. Pretty cool. And I can look at this from a bunch of different directions. The last thing I want to show you is that you can make it get wider. So let's just look at what that looks like. Already pretty cool. But I'm going to go back into the sweep, right click, edit feature, and I can make it taper, which means if I make it positive, let's say +1, the end is getting bigger than the beginning. So let's do 2 so you can see a little better. Let's actually do 4 so you can, ooh, it didn't like that. Okay, so that's making it get bigger at the end than it's able to handle. So I'm going to try 3 again, and you can see that that is making it much wider at the end than the beginning, much larger diameter. So tapering, usually tapering means that you're going to get smaller though. So let's edit the feature, and I'm going to do now, instead of a 3, I'm going to do a -2 to show you that it's getting thinner, and then let's just try a -3. So it got a lot thinner at the end, so that's an actual taper. So I'm going to say okay, and there's our taper. I actually have never tried twist, so let's just try it. What does a twist do? Twist 90 degrees. Doesn't like that. 901. What about 90? This isn't really going to show anything because our path, will it show anything? Let's try 180. Can't really tell if it's doing anything, but apparently it's twisting it around 180 degrees. Something that you could find useful at some point. I'm going to change it back to 0. So that is how you revolve, loft, and sweep, which are really advanced techniques that you can use to make any kind of shape in your imagination happen. And your assignment, after you complete this and create 3 different types of revolves like this, and 1 loft and 1 sweep, doesn't have to look exactly like mine, but I want a semicircle, a larger, like a more obtuse and a less obtuse kind of revolve. Once you complete that, you're going to work on an assignment to add some creativity to the mix. All right, have fun.